Welcome to Wife Cheating Story. I hope you have an enjoyable and relaxing time listening. Let's get started.
Prologue. Devin Buchanan looked out across the Starbucks and spotted an old friend, Michael Sullivan. Devin had been away for a while. Michael was sitting alone at a table with a coffee. Remembering their past friendship, Devin thought he would go over and see how he was doing. He figured he might offer some comfort. He paid for his coffee, picked it up, and walked over. As he approached, he noticed that Michael had changed. The thin, frail boy he remembered had grown into a strong man. He wasn't overweight, just fit, likely from spending time at the gym. Michael wore a nice tie, slacks, and a white shirt, looking quite put together. A sport coat rested on the back of his chair, looking good and well cared for. Devin also saw that Michael was playing with a newer laptop. He wondered if Michael had finally found his path. When he reached the table, Michael looked up and said, "Devin, I haven't seen you in forever. Where have you been?" Devin kept his coat on and sat down. "Oh, just busy with life." "How have you been?" Michael asked. "Pretty good, I guess. The usual stuff, school, marriage, and a kid." Devin took a sip of his drink. "I heard you married the Campanaris girl. Celine, right?" "Yeah, that's right. Did you ever get married?" Devin shook his head. "Not really, but I've dated a bit." He shifted in his seat. "I heard things have been rough for you. What's going on?" "Ah, you know how it goes. Boy meets girl, they fall in love, get married, have a kid, then another guy appears and things get messy." Devin didn't smile. He took another sip. "What's in that cup? A latte? Want another?" "Sure," Michael replied, "if you're paying." Devin smiled. "I'll buy, but I want to hear your story." Michael looked at his old friend. Devin had always been a good guy. He thought about how he had been away and might leave again. "It's not all great. Not everything is wonderful, but some parts are okay," Michael said. Devin waved at the waitress to order their drinks. "Go on, Mike. I'd like to know what happened." And so Michael began. "Devin, I did marry the Campanaris girl. I always liked her. And when my brother moved away to join the Navy, I took my chance. That's right. Celine and David were dating before." "Yeah, I remember. They were together for a while. They were high school sweethearts. My brother David was 2 years older than me and 3 years older than Celine. She was really fond of him, so it was hard for her when he left." "So you stepped in?" "Not right away. I always cared for her, but she was David's girlfriend. I had a little crush on her, but to her, I was just the kid brother." "But you did marry her." "Celine was feeling lonely. She kept coming by our house, checking in on my parents to see if David had written or called. He was off living his life, or so we thought. And remember, I married her, but she married me too." "What, David wasn't living life?" "I can't say. I just know he disappeared. We never heard from him, but Celine kept coming around. I was a senior in high school, she was a junior. We both had our proms that year. You know, I never had much luck with girls, unlike David." "Yeah, I remember him." "Who doesn't? He once told me that dating was like job hunting. You just had to keep asking until someone said yes." "Celine said yes to your brother." "Not exactly. Celine loved him and agreed to marry him. I think she would have followed him anywhere if he had asked. But Celine was quite dedicated to her values. You understand what that means." "Oh yeah," Devin replied. "No relationships before marriage." "Exactly. She cared for him deeply, but I believe Celine thought of my brother seriously. I suppose he grew tired of waiting. He liked her, but may have started seeing someone else. Sometimes I wonder if that's why he left." "Did he find someone else?" "Maybe. I really don't know. All I can say is that David left Celine heartbroken. Her parents were worried and thought she was in distress. I did care for her, but she had been my brother's girl." "So you were there for her?" "I didn't plan for it, but that's how it happened, on and off." Devin took a sip of his coffee. "I understand." "I didn't get things back then. I didn't understand her or myself. I wish I had. It's tough, you know. I'm a bit of a worrier, so I couldn't sleep well. I kept thinking about how she needed someone who could support her." "What happened, really?" Michael leaned back in his chair. "Get me another coffee and one of those scones, and I'll tell you everything." Devin waved at the waitress, went over to get the items, and returned. Michael began again. Well, David left to join the Navy, or so he said. That was the last anyone saw or heard from him for years. Celine was devastated. She truly cared for my brother. Most girls liked him, but Celine was different. She was a bit fragile, a good student who avoided sports. Sure, she played a little volleyball, but she spent more time in the library and at church. Other kids wore trendy clothes, but Celine was always neat and proper. After David disappeared, she started visiting my parents often. She would stay and talk. Soon, she and I were talking. We shared some similarities. I thought we connected well. Whenever she saw me, her face would light up. She seemed excited. I noticed that when she was alone, she wore cozy clothes like sweatshirts and sweatpants. But when she came to see me, she always dressed nicely. She wore pretty skirts with cheerful blouses that were casual yet innocent. Celine had the longest, sleekest black hair. It was usually put up when I saw her out, but when she was around me, she may have let it down or styled it beautifully. I really liked being around her. She was funny and cheerful. The only times I saw her sad was when someone mentioned my brother. Then she would go quiet and seem troubled. I truly liked her and often wished I had met her first. I could see she still had feelings for David, which was hard for me, and I always enjoyed her lovely scents. I know I'm not great at expressing how I feel. She wore a lovely fragrance, maybe Chanel, and her hair always smelled nice. I remember she had a mint spray that she used to keep her breath fresh. When we began dating, our time together felt special. I couldn't help but think about her all the time. I wanted her to be happy and hoped she could forget my brother and have feelings for me instead. It was winter during my senior year, and I had always liked Celine. I had been daydreaming about her for a while. I was fond of her, but as her older brother, I sometimes felt out of place. Despite having many chances to date, Celine spent lots of time at my house. One day I asked her out, and to my surprise, she said yes. That was the start of everything. I quickly fell in love. She saw me as a friend and a family connection. We dated through the spring, but things were pretty innocent, just some light touches and friendly gestures. We went to her junior prom and then mine. To others, we seemed close, but I felt like she was keeping some distance. Still, I wasn't discouraged. That was just how she was with David. Celine was a good person. I graduated and got into a local college. It was a great school. I enjoyed math, so I chose to double major in business and technology. I knew hard work was important for all subjects, especially for more challenging ones like mine. I continued to love Celine and lived at home. Celine visited often, and by the time I started college, I believed she was there for me more than my brother. She graduated on time, and I took her to her prom. By then, it was clear we had a connection. My first year focused on my studies, and I worked hard to save money for school. I didn't have time for dating classmates. Celine enjoyed socializing and met new people. I also started tutoring, mostly girls, and I thought of it as just work. But Celine might not have seen it that way. She mentioned wanting to meet other boys. A lot of guys were eager to meet her, but I was loyal to Celine. I thought she was special, and while I wanted to stay committed, she chose to start seeing other people. I often stayed home feeling sad when I wasn't working. If I went out, I'd likely see her with someone else, which made it hard for me. Friends told me that sometimes she would lose interest in whoever she was with, which gave me hope that she still cared. As time passed, I started feeling like I needed to move on. If she didn't understand why I was focused on work and school, maybe it was best if we parted ways. I was determined to succeed. I believed it would benefit both of us. Ultimately, I decided that if she could date, so could I. Surprisingly, I found there were many girls interested, and soon I began seeing someone named Marge. She was smart and kind, and she seemed to really like me. I was still young and inexperienced, but she showed me more about life. We shared special moments in my car one night. She was fun and lively, and I found that exciting. We soon spent time at her sister's house. Staying there became common during the summer. I enjoyed being with Marge, but deep down felt she wasn't the one for me. As summer ended, Marge said she was going back to school in Ohio. I felt sad and told her I would miss her. She said the same, and just like that, she left. Marge had helped me grow in many ways, but school started again, and I needed to focus. I thought of her sometimes, but I missed Celine a lot more. Celine found a job at a local store after she graduated. I knew she worked there because she still came by my parents' house occasionally. We didn't talk much, but I heard from my mom that Celine was curious about what I was up to and if I was dating anyone. My mom also mentioned Celine had started seeing someone else, which surprised me. In my sophomore year, things started getting interesting. My grades were good and I was working part-time, but my mom wanted to repaint the house. My dad couldn't help because of his back, so I took on the task. Mom said I could do it when I wasn't studying. To help with this, she began giving me money from her paycheck, so I quit my job. I needed to buy paint and supplies, but my mom had a few preferred stores. One favorite was Lowe's, where the paint section was located right by the tools. I soon realized Celine worked in the tool section, so our visits to Lowe's might not have been a coincidence after all. I would drive my mom to the store. She would look at colors with the paint guy and often asked me to take a break and walk around. I never got very far before Celine showed up by my side. It felt like she always came on her break when I was there. We would chat a bit, and she would point out good deals and share stories about her life. Then one day, on my mom's third visit, while I was near the power saws, Celine told me she was ready to settle down. She was fiddling with a circular saws blade when she said, "You know, Michael, I'm done moving around. I want to settle down." I walked over to the files. She followed me and, standing beside the sanders, said, "Did you hear me? I'm ready for you now." I picked up a sander and replied, "I was ready before, but you left." "How do I know you're serious now?" She gently turned me to face her and touched my elbows. "Oh, I'm ready, Michael. I really am." I hesitated. The big question was about my brother, so I asked, "What about David?" She shrugged. "What about him?" I continued, "You only dated me before because you wanted to be near him. I don't think you really cared for me then, and I'm sure it's the same now." She squeezed my elbows, leaned in closer, and whispered, "Okay, I did date you to be near David, but I care about you now." I told her, "I don't believe that." She admitted, "Honestly, I used to think of David when I was with you. I still think of him sometimes, but Michael, I care about you now." I wasn't convinced. For me to believe that, I need a real commitment, something that shows me you truly care. She responded, "Take me out, and I'll prove it to you." I suggested, "How about next Friday night?" She smiled, "Friday night," and hurried away. I returned to where my mom was. She had finally ordered all the paint she wanted. I asked, "Did you choose your colors?" She smiled and replied, "Yes, sweetie, I did. They're all right here." I looked down and saw 4 5-gallon buckets of paint on the cart. "Mom, they're all white." She asked, "Did you and Celine work things out?" I looked at her and simply said, "Not really." We loaded the paint and went home. I started painting the house but never really finished. Celine and I tried dating again, but she didn't want the kind of commitment I wanted. I had known what I wanted from past experiences. After our third date, I told her, "Celine, I want more than just a casual relationship. I want something real." She smiled and suggested, "Let's take things slowly." I thought about her response. I wanted more, but I was curious where that comment came from. I said, "I want a real connection." She looked confused and said, "I could maybe consider it?" That made me worry. I said, "Celine, if you care about me, you'll understand what I'm looking for." She whispered, "I can't go that far." I asked, "Why not?" She said, "I believe in taking my time." I felt frustrated and replied, "I can't wait forever." She then shared her fears. "If I go further, everything will change." Watching her get upset made me hesitant to respond. She began to cry and said, "I can't give you what you want. I don't have it anymore," and cried even harder. I asked, "What do you mean by it?" I had an idea, but couldn't believe she had given up. She broke down. "Tommy Sheldon had an effect on me." I pressed, "Had an effect?" She continued, "I was upset with you when you started dating Marge. I wanted to get even, but my way was to—" I interrupted, "No, that's not true. You were with Tommy because of his connections and his new car." "I know the truth. David was with you before he left." She paused, her tears. "Yes, Tommy was important to me, and yes, I wanted to swim every day, but David never had that kind of bond with me. Oh, Michael, you must hate me now. I'm so sorry. I promise I'll make it up to you. I'm here for you now. I'll do anything you need." As we neared her house, I said, "Anything?" She wiped her eyes and said, "Anything. I'll do whatever you want. She leaned in closer and said, I care about you, only you. I repeated, anything? Anything, Michael. I looked at her in disbelief. If you'll do anything, I said slowly. She nodded. My expression hardened. Then please leave my car and don't talk to me again. She hesitated. Michael, I replied firmly, go find whoever it was you were with last. Just go. She stepped back, stunned. I said leave, I shouted, feeling a wave of anger surge inside. She finally got out, and I drove off quickly, tires screeching down the street. Later, I met up with an older friend who offered me a drink. I sat quietly, trying to forget the bitterness and regret. I realized my biggest mistake was holding back for someone who didn't appreciate my feelings. I thought about all those times I hesitated, believing I was doing the right thing, while others didn't wait. I felt foolish and promised myself it wouldn't happen again. From then on, I focused on my work, not for school, not for painting my parents' house, not for any small job, and definitely not for Celine. I set out on my quest to connect with every girl I knew, had known, or would ever know. I remembered a famous athlete who claimed to have many relationships. I thought that while I might not be great at sports, I could still make my mark in the social scene. I made it my goal to form connections with as many girls as I could. Soon I realized I was quite popular. Maybe word had spread about my friendly nature, or perhaps the girls enjoyed my company. I took my brother's advice, treating dating like a search for opportunities. If one relationship didn't work, I simply moved on to the next. I found myself in a group of friends. Some were girls, and even older women liked having me around. Some preferred a gentle approach, while others liked straight talk, and a few enjoyed a special touch. I didn't mind adjusting to each of their preferences. Health concerns were always on my mind, as they would be for anyone. But I thought that was why precautions existed. For me, it was not only about the connections, but also about proving my worth. I wasn't focused on getting back at anyone. I just wanted to explore friendships. This continued for weeks, even months. But even the most carefree person can tire eventually. The excitement faded, and I had to admit it. I was fooling myself. I figured I would keep going until a problem arose or someone noticed. What finally changed everything was a phone call on a late Friday night. I had been to my classes, then stopped by the bowling alley where I met a girl I knew. It didn't matter who she was. We had shared some time together in my old Chevy S10 Blazer. After dropping her off and wishing her a good night, I headed to my parents' house to prepare for work the next morning. I was upstairs when I heard the phone ring. I didn't know where my cell was, probably downstairs, but late-night calls were usually for me. While I was finishing up, my mom called for me from downstairs saying I needed to go to Bear Creek Road right away. I yelled back, asking why. She told me that Celine was out there and needed a ride home. I said Celine could find someone else, but my mom insisted. She said Celine was crying and sounded very upset. A guy had taken her out there and tried to hurt her. She got away but was clearly shaken, and her parents weren't home. Celine was an only child, used to getting her way. If she was desperate enough to call my parents, something must have been really wrong. I yelled down to tell my mom I'd go help Celine as soon as I could. My mom said I should hurry, since Celine sounded really worried. I hurried even though I felt unsure about it. Bear Creek Road was quite lonely. I knew the area had streams and at least one old bridge that had washed away during floods a few years ago. I had no idea where exactly I was going, and it took me about half an hour to reach the road. I must have driven around for 20 minutes before I found her. Celine looked scared, but physically okay. I asked her, "What were you doing out here?" She seemed confused, but replied, "I don't know exactly. I'm glad you came. I knew you would. I think I was with Tommy, and he wanted to show me a fishing spot." I couldn't believe it. "Celine, you don't even like fishing. You always had an excuse when I asked you to go." She looked lost. "I don't remember. We were at a dance. Tommy is in a club. He wanted me to go with him. At first there were a lot of kids, but then all the girls were gone. It was just a few boys. I got scared and started yelling. I can't really remember." Celine did not seem convincing, and she sounded dazed. I asked, "Did you drink anything? Did you eat?" She was sitting on the side of the road and didn't look eager to get up. She said, I think I had some wine, and maybe something else. It tasted sweet. They gave me some food, too. I think it was garlicky. That's when I noticed some stains on her shirt, which made me worry. She wasn't being helpful, but it sounded like Tommy or his friends had given her something. If this had been Celine from a few months ago, I would have thought she'd never take anything like that, but now she seemed different. I leaned down and helped her up. She had a few scratches, torn clothes, and some mud, but it looked like she had gotten away from someone who might have meant her harm. I looked around and found her purse near a puddle. Using my phone, I called her parents. I wasn't very strong, but I managed to lift her and carry her to my car. I laid her in the back and covered her with a blanket. I used a damp cloth to clean her face, and by the time I finished, she was already fast asleep. I got in the driver's seat and took her back to my parents' house. My mom was waiting for us when I arrived with Celine. She took one look at Celine and almost lost it. My dad calmed her down while I brought Celine inside and put her on the living room sofa. She was still asleep. I felt a wave of worry and told my mom, "I don't know what's wrong. She was with some people, and I think they may have given her something. Maybe we should take her to the hospital?" Dad agreed, and we all got into my car. My parents sat in the front while I held Celine in the back. The hospital was really close, and we arrived in just a few minutes. I wondered how long she had been like this, remembering she had been talking when I found her. I felt scared, thinking of other girls I had heard about who had been in similar situations and faced serious trouble. I cared for her and knew she could be in danger. We got to the hospital, and I explained everything to the nurse, who quickly took her in. I wanted to know what they would do, but I was left waiting. They let my mom and dad in with her, but I had to stay outside. I realized what the staff must have thought when they saw me. I was as muddy as Celine. They probably thought I was involved somehow, and they were even calling the police. I sat down and started calling around, determined to find Tommy. If Celine didn't wake up, I wanted to confront him. After several tries, I reached a friend who had Tommy's number. I called and got his voicemail. He was home watching TV. I told him where I was, who was with me, and warned him to come to the hospital quickly. He acted tough, saying he wasn't scared of me. I told him he should be concerned, especially now. Right away, he hung up. As I waited, doctors and nurses came in and out, and I felt like I was under a spotlight. Soon, the police arrived, and one of the nurses pointed toward me. There were two of them, a man and a woman. They walked over, and I raised my hand saying, "I'm an ex-boyfriend." She called my parents, and I found her. I wanted to help. Just then, a doctor came out and said something to one of the nurses. She came over and asked, "Are you Michael Sullivan?" I nodded. She said, "Celine's awake. She's confused and upset. She's been asking for you, saying you saved her life. She's groggy but should be okay." I looked at the police and asked, "Can I go in?" The female officer asked for my name, which I gave. She then asked for the name of the person who might have approached her. I said, "Tommy Sheldon." I realized how foolish that sounded. The officer probably thought I was a bit naive. I collected myself and said, "My name's Michael Sullivan. She was out with someone named Tommy Sheldon. I think he might have influenced her." The female officer looked at her partner and said to the nurse, "Can we have her shirt?" I asked again, "Can I see my friend?" The officer nodded, and I didn't hesitate. I rushed to her room and saw she was barely awake. As I approached, Celine opened her eyes halfway and reached for my hand. I held her hand out to me, and it was hard to hear her say, "I love you." I stood there for a while, but it was just a few minutes. Then a doctor came over and started talking, but I had a hard time understanding him. He told me that Celine was lucky. They didn't know how much she had taken, but with alcohol and her small size, it could have been dangerous. He said she might be fine in a few days or that there could be lasting effects. He warned that the substances young people use today are very concerning and can be very harmful. He explained that even if her brain was affected, it might not show in her physical abilities, but could affect her judgment. I felt scared by the doctor's words. Celine had always been a kind person, even if she sometimes did things without thinking. She had frustrated me in the past, but I never wanted her to be in danger. I knew we needed to talk seriously. They got in touch with Tommy Sheldon, but he denied everything. He later admitted that the substance on her blouse was his. I felt angry at him, but was relieved that Celine was going to be okay. By Monday, Celine was home. That evening, after my classes, I went to her house to talk. Her parents were happy to see me. Celine's dad shook my hand and said, "I'm proud of you, Michael. She could be in a tough spot without you." Her mom shared similar thoughts. We sat in the living room while Celine waited for me. I said to them, "Celine means a lot to me. You know that, but we don't always get along. I think we care about each other, but it feels hard sometimes." I noticed Celine wasn't downstairs. Suddenly, I heard her from the kitchen say, "That's not true. We both care about each other. The problem is we're too similar." I stood up and said, "Mr. and Mrs. Campanaris, may I speak with your daughter?" They nodded, and Mr. Campanaris said, "Go right ahead." I walked into the kitchen where Celine was sitting at the table with a glass of wine. I looked at her with concern and asked, "What are you doing?" She looked back at me and answered, "I'm just having a glass of wine." I said, "Celine, if you hadn't drunk something the other night, it might have turned out better." I told her, "That could have been dangerous." She took another sip and said, "I'm not with Tommy Sheldon anymore. I'm with you, and you're not going to hurt me." I replied, frustrated, "Celine, you're not being reasonable. Everything is different since what happened with Tommy." She walked to the sink and poured out her wine. "First," she said calmly, "please lower your voice. My parents are home. Second, I made it up. Tommy didn't do anything. I just wanted to get a reaction out of you." I looked at her, trying to understand. I wanted to trust her, but it didn't feel right. "You seemed really sure when you told me," I said quietly. "It's hard to forget that now." She sat beside me and took my hand gently. "Do you really think I would lie about that?" I looked at her, unsure. "It's tough to know what to believe, Celine. It's not just about what you say. It's about trust." She rested her hand lightly on my arm, speaking softly. "I've never been with anyone like that." I nodded slowly, listening, then asked, "How many guys have you been with? How many times?" She withdrew her hand. "Not many, and I only cared for Tommy briefly. I might have had feelings for David." I saw that faraway look in her eyes again. "David," I said. "It always comes back to him." Celine seemed troubled by that thought. "He was my first boyfriend," she said before brightening up. "But you're going to be my last." I noticed her hesitation, as if she were going to say more, but didn't. I guessed, "And Jerry, right?" She looked surprised, but replied, "Yes, Jerry, but that didn't mean much." I shrugged. "Well, that makes me feel better. You know I care about you. I've been with other girls." She interrupted, "Like Marge Vogel." I added, "Yeah, her and others too, but I've always cared for you and only started seeing Marge after you wanted to explore things." "You remember that?" Celine asked, wanting to have a serious conversation. "Yeah, and about those tutors." I held up my hand to stop her. "Look, I'm doing well in school. I'm ahead with the tech stuff and on track in my business classes. When I finish college, I think I'll be okay. But I need to focus on my studies. If you want to support me, you need to be right there beside me, not hiding out. I need to trust you. Right now, I don't." She sat back. "Okay, I get it. Michael, I have an idea." I was surprised. "You do?" She got up and went to the sink, poured herself a glass of water, and drank it. "Let's start fresh. I'm still only 19 and just out of high school. I've been silly and immature. I know I can be spoiled. I've made mistakes, but I'm still the same girl you liked. You're the same boy." I stood up too. "You mean starting over from the beginning?" "Yes," she nodded. "Go home, wait a few days, and call me. Ask me out. It'll be a fresh start. I promise you won't regret it." I smiled at her suggestion. "And what about—" She didn't move, watching me closely, then said, "A first date is a first date. It will take time, but I promise to be there with you." "Everything?" I asked, curious. She looked at me sincerely. "I promise, just don't rush it, but you'll get everything you want. And more." I wondered what she meant. I moved closer to show my interest, but she stepped back. "No, you haven't even asked me out yet." I stopped and replied, "Okay, I'm going home. Tomorrow it's a fresh start." She nodded. Fresh start. I left through the kitchen, dining room, and living room, heading to the front door. I turned back and waved to the Campanaris family, saying, "See you soon." They exchanged glances, and Mrs. Campanaris replied, "See you soon, Michael." I opened the door and stepped outside. After a week, I called to set up our first date. I had many thoughts. First, we had known each other for nearly 4 years. While we were friends before, our close connection started in my junior year of high school when she was a sophomore. Now, I was in my second year of college. We had gone through arguments, reconciliations, and everyday ups and downs. I wanted to set it all aside and begin anew. If we were going to make this work, we couldn't focus on old problems. I wouldn't want to. We both had our past to deal with. Celine had mentioned Marge, and there were others she might have talked about too. I had my own worries. Guys like Tommy and Jerry had been around her lately, and I had to push those thoughts aside. My main worry wasn't about her friends. It was about my brother. His past lingered in my mind like a shadow. I loved my brother, but honestly, I hoped he would never come back home. Then there was the big question. Did I love her enough to start fresh together? The answer was clear. Yes, I did love her. I loved her with all my heart. But I knew relationships required work from both sides. She had to be just as committed. We were about to become a pair, and there wouldn't be room for anyone else. I called her up and set a date. I kept it casual. I said, "Hi, is this Celine Campanaris?" She replied, "Yes." "Is this Michael Sullivan?" I answered, "Yes, I thought I'd call because I've got some cash burning a hole in my pocket. Want to help me spend it?" Celine responded, "I can spend money, Michael. What's your plan?" I suggested a simple dinner and maybe a spin around the ice rink. Celine liked ice skating and was quite good at it. "I'd like that a lot. Do you have a day or time in mind?" I said, "This Friday night. How about I pick you up around 6 o'clock? She replied, "Sounds great. See you then." I hung up feeling pleased. Thus began my second time dating Celine Campanaris. We did things I knew she enjoyed. We went skating, watched movies, and visited the College Student Union for snacks and talk. We enjoyed long drives in the countryside and even spotted an owl, returning to see it again. We kept everything fun and light. As the spring semester started, we slowly grew deeper in our relationship. I was careful not to rush her. As we got closer, our talks included the future, what we envisioned, our hopes, and our dreams. We discussed family, values, and beliefs. Celine was very religious. Once she mentioned she had thought about dedicating her life to helping others in faraway places. That made me a little uneasy since Celine had always been easy to read. I could tell when she was not being entirely honest. She truly meant it when she talked about wanting to serve others. I realized she was much more complex than I had thought. Her comments about Tommy and her later change of heart made me think. Celine was more than just another pretty girl. There was depth to her. Yet, the situation with David weighed on my mind, too. I still worried about that. Celine had changed in many ways as well. Over the last year, she had matured more. She had also grown taller. I guessed she was around 5 5 inches or 5 6 inches now. I loved her hair, how she continued to let it grow and style it beautifully. Her skin was soft and glowing, enhancing her natural beauty. Physically, she was striking, but her personality was really her strongest quality. The sweet, lively Celine I fell in love with in high school was still there, but now she showed a polished maturity. If I said something awkward or silly, she had a way of turning it into something good, adding her gentle touch to situations. Her fiery temper would come out, but it never lingered. She would express her frustration about something, then quickly break into laughter over the silliness of it. She had always been fun, but now I found her even warmer and more caring. My Celine was becoming a true woman. I only hoped I was keeping up with her. By then, I realized she was the more mature one. She had kept her job and was now saving some of her money, rather than spending it all right away. I was busy studying most of the time, and she respected that, supporting me in my schoolwork. I saw her as more than just a girlfriend. She would buy me supplies and technology, and she was learning about new stuff as much as I was. Together, we were becoming a real team. Near the end of my sophomore year, I decided we were ready for the next step. We had enjoyed special moments together while keeping our boundaries, which made us both happy. I loved being close to her, feeling the warmth of her presence. One time we were out together, and I accidentally left my wallet on her mom's kitchen counter. It was late, and her parents were already asleep. Celine playfully picked it up and asked, "What's this?" I laughed and said, "Okay, give it back." She teased, "Not yet." Before I knew it, she was looking through my wallet, checking everything inside. There was nothing odd, just my usual cards and some pictures. What surprised her were several photos of herself from times she didn't know about. After handing me back my wallet, she changed the topic. I was curious about her purse, so I took a look inside. There were some family pictures and others of her cousins and grandparents, but I didn't see any of me. I remembered giving her one of my graduation pictures, but it wasn't there. There was one of someone else. It was David's picture, and it looked like it had been seen often. There was writing on the back, but I didn't get to read it because she snatched it from my hand. Then it hit me. She'd been to my house a lot and seen everything in my room. She knew me well, but I had never been in her room. Without thinking, I jumped up and headed for the stairs, taking two at a time with Celine right behind me. I rushed into her room and it shocked me. It looked just like I thought a girl's room with dolls, decorations, and lots of feminine touches. There was a picture by her bed, an old photo of her and David together. I glanced around and saw not a single picture of me. Turning around, I saw Celine standing behind me. I recognized her expression. Nothing had changed. It was always about David. I stepped past her and went downstairs, out the door, to my car, and then home. It felt over for me. I hadn't even been in my parents' house for 5 minutes when I heard a car pull up outside. I was down in the dumps when I looked out the front window. Celine had followed me home. She climbed up the steps to my porch and walked into the front room right in front of me. She was crying, saying, "No, you're wrong. It's not him." She held a bunch of pictures in her hands and tossed them at my feet. All were of David. "Okay, that was a mistake," she admitted. "I never expected this." Before I could say anything, she rushed into my arms and held me tightly. I tried to pull away, but she wouldn't let go. She looked deeply into my eyes, seeking comfort. As we sat on the couch, I noticed it was late. Our feelings were intense as we shared that moment. She leaned in closer, and I felt a stronger bond between us. Her eyes looked different, almost mesmerizing. Just a few seconds later, we were close together, and I was overwhelmed. I noticed her breath hitch, showing how intense the situation was. She seemed composed despite a few tears. The moment passed quickly, leaving me feeling lost. I didn't know what she was thinking, and I didn't ask. For several minutes, I stayed close, feeling her embrace as if she didn't want to let go. Eventually, she relaxed her grip, and I sat up as she turned to lie next to me. Though I felt nervous, she looked calm. She quietly said, "You're mine, understand?" I nodded. She got up, dressed, and left. We never talked about that moment again, and nothing like it happened for months. In the following days, she seemed determined to keep her distance. It felt like it never happened at all. After she left, I spent some time tidying up the couch. I wasn't sure why, but it made me feel uneasy. Finally, in June, after classes ended, I planned a family meeting. I invited my parents and Celine's parents to a local diner. I treated them to lunch, and I think everyone except Celine knew the real reason for gathering. As we finished dessert, I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small box. I was sitting between my mom and Celine's mom, with Celine across from me. Instead of making a big show, I quietly placed the box on the table and slid it towards Celine. At first, she didn't realize what it was, but soon she did. There were no big reactions, just a sweet smile on her face. She reached across the table, ignoring the box, and placed her hand on mine, whispering, "Yes." I then got up, walked around the table, knelt beside her, opened the box, took out the ring, and placed it on her finger. My mom started clapping, and Celine's mother was emotional. Celine admired the ring, smiled at me, and softly said, "I love you." I felt so happy and asked her, "Will you marry me?" She smiled and replied, "You know I will." Her father called the waitress for a bottle of red wine, and we all cheered to the moment. Our mothers started discussing the wedding, with her mom mentioning they might need to adjust the dress that had been in their family for a long time. Celine would wear her mother's wedding dress, which was passed down from her grandmother. Her grandfather had served in Vietnam and married Celine's grandmother before he was deployed. Celine's mother had worn the same dress, and now it was Celine's turn. My mom mentioned she had some jewelry that would also go to Celine. I thought about her older brother, David, and how I wanted Celine to have that family piece, no matter what it meant. As the gathering ended, Celine and I walked to my car. We talked about my college plans, buying a house, and how many kids we wanted. Celine, being an only child, said she wanted a big family. and I happily agreed. We held hands in the car and enjoyed a lovely summer. I found a great job that paid well above minimum wage while Celine became a supervisor at her work. It seemed like everything was on track for us. Then came the surprise. We found out we were expecting. Celine had some trouble with her birth control, and that led to our news. We decided to get married at the end of July and took a short trip to Niagara Falls for our honeymoon. Our parents helped us set up our new place, and everything felt perfect. Celine returned to work, and I found another good job, which allowed us to start saving for my college tuition. As fall came around, we felt like a great team. I was back in classes, and thanks to my boss, I had a well-paying part-time job that didn't take too many hours. I had enough free time to study. The teachers were assigning quite a bit of work, but Celine was always there helping me out with research. At her job, her hard work was noticed, and she was getting ready for another promotion. Everything seemed to be going well, so one day we decided to have a family dinner at the diner. Celine and I were excited and decided to spend some time together before her parents arrived. As we finished up, we heard them coming. It was a lovely April evening, and I ordered haddock while Celine chose lobster. Life felt good. My spring semester wrapped up with excellent grades. Celine got a raise, and I secured a promising summer job. As June arrived, Celine started feeling unwell, and we knew something was happening. We recalled that night out, where we thought she was safe, but things can be unexpected. We were ready to embrace our growing family. Our parents were supportive, but concerned. We looked at the timeline and planned, hoping to get through my senior year without too much trouble, even if it took a little longer than expected. Celine had a plan. I would finish my undergraduate studies about 6 months later than I expected, with help from our soon-to-be grandmothers. Summer flew by. Celine took classes to prepare for having a baby and rearranged our small apartment. Together we visited yard sales and second-hand shops. Our grandparents helped us gather all the baby necessities, even diapers. We were careful with our money, but it felt good knowing we were preparing for our future. As fall arrived, I went back to school. I took on a heavier course load to complete my studies sooner. Those were some happy times. I felt proud to attend the Lamaze classes with Celine. She was a wonderful mother, Tobe, and I was overjoyed. I remember our first sonogram, the first time we felt the baby kick, and the moment we learned we would have a girl. We searched through many books to pick the perfect name, and Celine even talked about saving for her education. Celine was glowing during her pregnancy. I had loved her before, but with the baby on the way, my happiness grew even more. She was a great wife and an amazing daughter-in-law. I knew she would be an incredible mother. Sure, it wasn't always easy. There were bouts of morning sickness, emotional ups and downs, and trips to the store for unusual cravings. We shared all the worries that come with expecting a child, but we faced them together. We never missed Mass, not once. I wasn't Catholic, but changing my faith for Celine didn't feel like a big deal. On that blessed day, January 11th, at 11:03 a.m., our baby girl arrived. We named her Sierra Angelina Fiametta Sullivan. She weighed 6 pounds 7 ounces and was 19 inches long. I looked at Celine holding our precious little girl, and I felt like the happiest man alive. My brother David had been away for about 4 years, just the length of a Navy enlistment. But I hadn't thought much about him during that time. He had been gone for so long, I had almost forgotten I had a brother. Then Mom called me around 1 p.m. with exciting news. "Guess what, Michael?" she said. "David's home." My heart raced. What would I say to him? What would Celine think? I worried because David had left, not her. Tension filled the air. Celine had told me she was completely devoted to me, but I worried about what could have happened in the past. I believed she might not have been entirely truthful, even if whatever had happened before wasn't significant. But now that David was back, I was anxious about what that would mean for us. Celine was just finishing her shower when I called out to her. "Hey, Celine, that was my mom. Guess who's back?" She came into the room, still in her robe, her hair damp. "Who? Do tell," she asked. I tried to act relaxed, but I was worried. "David's back." I noticed her expression change. Celine replied, "Really? When did he get back?" I felt a weight on my chest. "I'm not sure. Mom just said he was back." As Celine walked back to the bedroom, she suggested inviting him over. I knew I had to check on the baby. Celine hurried to get ready for work, leaving soon after. I had almost 9 hours to worry and think about David. A little while later, David unexpectedly showed up at our apartment, bringing a case of expensive beer. We had agreed to avoid alcohol in the house with the baby around. I invited him in, but kept my guard up. "Dave, Mom said you were back," I said. He looked happy, but I felt uneasy about his grin. "Yeah, just got back," he said, showing me the beer. Despite my concerns, he walked into the kitchen, putting 2 six-packs in the fridge and opening another to hand me one. I hesitated but accepted. He seemed different than I remembered. I was curious about his time away and asked, "We haven't heard from you in 4 years. How was the Navy?" His smile looked more like a grimace. "Oh, it was great, but it was time to move on." I pressed him for details. "Were you on a ship?" He opened another beer, saying he'd been on a carrier. "Maybe you've heard of it, the Ronald Reagan," he said before quickly changing the subject to Celine and my marriage. My mind raced with questions about who he had become during his time away. "I heard you have a child now. When did you get married?" I guess she couldn't wait. I was surprised by that comment. I quickly changed the topic back to the Navy. He drove a nearly new car that looked fancy. I knew little about it, but it was definitely expensive. I said, "Looks like you did well in the Navy. That's a nice car." He turned his head away, avoiding eye contact, and said, "Yeah, I'm doing okay. Mom mentioned you had a baby girl." I took another sip of my beer and asked, "Would you like to see her?" He smirked and replied, "Sure, show me the baby." I stood up and he followed me. I said, "Leave the beer here." He put it down, saying, "Sure." I led him into the bedroom, which also served as a nursery. Celine and I wanted to be near our daughter, Sierra, all the time. Celine was very careful with the crib, ensuring everything was safe. We researched how to keep our baby safe, avoiding anything that could cause an accident. I showed David our baby. He looked down at her awkwardly. He then asked if she was mine, and I was taken aback. I tried to smile but wasn't sure if it came off right and said, "Yes, she's mine for sure." Looking past me, he noticed our computer and asked if he could smoke. I was shocked and replied firmly, "No, not here. Celine and I don't smoke and we don't want anything like that near our baby." I emphasized "our" to make it clear. He stepped back and reacted, "No kidding. No alcohol, no smoking." I tried to joke, "It's not a prison." "No, it's our nursery," I said. Thankfully, Sierra didn't wake up. I took my brother's arm and led him back to the kitchen with no resistance. He seemed to be assessing our simple things, asking how I got along with Celine. I shared our story but left out details about our disagreements. Toward the end, David surprised me by saying, "Yeah, I remember Celine. I'm glad you're with her." I hesitated but eventually said, "If anything had happened between you two, I would have known." He glanced at the fridge, noticing he only had 1 beer left in his 6-pack. I hadn't finished my first. He looked at me and then back at the fridge. "Mind if I?" he asked. I smiled and said, "You should take it with you. Celine would be surprised to see it in there." He understood and gave me a half smile. "Mom says you're in college," he said. "Yeah, almost done. This is my study night," I replied, hoping he would take the hint. He got up, heading to the fridge and asking, "Want me to leave you a couple?" I said, "No, Celine wouldn't like that." He laughed, catching me off guard. "Yeah, she can be tough." I agreed, knowing Celine was firm about certain things. David grabbed his drinks, waved goodbye, and started for the stairs. I walked him down and then rushed back upstairs to check on Sierra. She was still sleeping soundly. I leaned in close to make sure she was okay, then returned to my books lying across the bed. I needed to study but felt torn about wanting to be close to my daughter. Thoughts of my brother kept distracting me. I wondered what it was like for him in the Navy, and whether he had really changed or if I'd just not noticed as a kid. I had a feeling he was troubled, and my instinct told me to be cautious around him. Celine would see through him too. I reassured myself there was nothing to worry about. Sierra started to squirm. Checking the clock, I noticed it was almost feeding time. I got up and Celine arrived home on time. She noticed the cans in the trash, which I had meant to throw out but thought she should see. "Where did those come from?" she asked. I replied, David stopped by. He brought them. She looked at me puzzled. You let him drink here? Honestly, he slipped them past me. I didn't get a chance to stop him. She looked annoyed. We agreed no alcohol after the baby came. I explained. He caught me off guard. She was tired and said, "We can't have any more of that, okay?" "Sure, honey," I replied. "You look tired. Want me to help with anything?" She half yawned and replied, "No, just take out the trash. I'm exhausted." After I took out the trash, I checked on Sierra again. She needed a diaper change, and I took care of that. By the time I got settled for bed, Celine was already under the covers. We often had quiet moments before sleep, but I sensed tonight would be different. Celine turned to face me and said, "Your mom asked me to call her today." "Really?" I replied. "Yes, she was worried about David," she said after a pause. "I saw him earlier, but I didn't think anything was wrong." She then said, "He has an illness called brucellosis. Your mom said he got it while serving overseas and he needs medical care." I was surprised. I didn't think he looked that bad. "Did Mom say that?" "Yes, and she wants us to keep an eye on him," she added. I felt uneasy. I whispered, "Okay." Just then the phone rang. I was surprised it was my mom calling. "Hello, Michael," she said. "Hi, Mom, what's going on?" "David's got brucellosis," she said. I yawned, trying to stay focused. "Yeah, Celine told me. We have to help him," she insisted. Earlier, I had looked up brucellosis. I had my doubts about it being serious. I tried to share with my mom. It seems like he's confused. He's not lying, but he has other problems. "Oh, Michael, he's your brother. He deserves support, and I'm worried about him," she replied. My mom was right about veterans needing help, but I wasn't even sure David was a veteran anymore since he left years ago. He said he was joining the Navy, but we didn't hear from him again until recently. When he returned, he seemed troubled and mentioned he got sick while serving our country. I wasn't sure what to think. I told Mom, "We'll be here for him." "Okay, Michael," Mom replied. "He will need a lot of support, at least until he feels better." "Don't worry, Mom. We're here for him." "Thanks, honey. I have to go now. Your brother is staying with us for a while and is back in his old room. I think he had a rough night. I hear him upstairs, so I will hang up and make him breakfast. Bye." Mom ended the call, and I did too. I thought about David's tough night. He left with several packs of drinks, and I remembered there weren't any in my parents' house since they didn't keep them. I sensed he might be feeling unwell or going through a hard time. I decided I should check his military records to see if he was honorably discharged. If he was, I would support him. If I couldn't find that information, I would have to rethink things. Suddenly, I realized I needed to hurry to work. As I came down the stairs, Mom Campanaris greeted me. I appreciated her kindness. She said, "Michael, we heard your brother's back." I responded, "Yes, he came by yesterday." She looked worried and hinted at our living situation. I reassured her, "Of course not. Celine and I are married." She smiled, but I could see a hint of doubt in her eyes, which made me uneasy. After finishing my workday, I got home to find Celine making dinner. David was in the living room with Sierra, and it made me feel a bit anxious. I walked in and said, "Hey, everyone, how's it going?" Celine smiled and said, "David's joining us for dinner. I thought we could have fried eggs and bacon." I noticed the microwave was on. I figured that was where the bacon was. I asked David, "Where's your car? Is that your bike outside?" David held up my niece, Sierra, and said, "I sold the car and bought a used bike. The car was a mistake anyway." I didn't like how he was holding Sierra, but didn't say anything. I thought about the car he drove just the day before, which had Indiana license plates. If he bought it there, wouldn't he need temporary tags? Selling nearly new for an old bike seemed odd, but David often made strange choices. "Looks like a nice bike," I commented. He replied, "Yeah, I always wanted one, but being away so much it would have been in storage most of the time." "Hey, Dave," I called. "What did you do in the Navy?" He shouted back, "Missile technology. I was on a missile frigate most of the time." I thought, that's odd. I thought you were on the carrier, the Ronald Reagan. He explained that they needed someone with missile tech experience, so he got switched. I found this frustrating. I looked at Celine. She had cracked a couple of eggs, which was unusual for her. "Need any help?" I asked. She replied cheerfully, maybe too cheerfully. Could you get the bacon and finish the eggs? I need to change Sierra. I went into the kitchen. Sure, honey. I gave her a gentle touch before she went to the living room. Michael, stop that. David might see. I felt strange in my own home. I finished cooking the eggs, but the next few broke too. They say fresh eggs often crack more easily. I heard Celine and David leave the living room and go back to our bedroom. I was certain David didn't realize I could still hear them. I caught part of their conversation where he told her, "I missed you." She replied, "I missed you too. We all missed you." He said, "I thought about you all the time. I guess I could have written." Celine quietly said, "A letter would have been nice." Then he mentioned something about how he couldn't write after basic training because he went to a special school. She asked, "Like a secret mission?" He replied, "Something like that. I can't talk about it." I overheard him mention, "They've sealed my military records. No one's supposed to know what I've done. I might be recalled." I didn't catch everything, but I felt uneasy. Even if I found information online, he could say it was false. This wasn't the David I remembered, but maybe it was. The David I knew wasn't serious about studies, but loved social activities and risky fun. I finished cooking the eggs, and the second batch of bacon was almost ready. I called, "Dinner's ready." Celine answered, "Be right there." A minute later, we were all at the kitchen table. Celine had Sierra's bassinet beside her. She was smiling and cooing. I glanced at Celine, who looked happy. Then I looked at David, and he seemed to be watching me with a hint of jealousy. He gently said to Celine, "You're a lucky girl." She looked at our baby and then at him, avoiding eye contact with me. She smiled back at David. I think so. I needed to change the topic. "Hey, David, remember when your license was suspended during your senior year?" He looked at me and Celine, and I guessed she hadn't heard this story. David mumbled, "Uh-huh." I continued, recalling how he bought Gary Upton's old Pontiac but couldn't get insurance to have tags. I remembered how he and his friend borrowed a tag from another car and repainted the letters. He shrugged, still looking uncomfortable. I added, "And remember the time you had all that siphoned gas in your trunk and thought you needed new tires? You were going to take tires from another car, but it was dark, and you lit a match to see." David sat stiff, hardly touching his food. "Yeah, but that was a long time ago," I interrupted. "They said flames shot high into the air. I remember your face was burned. Dad was really upset." Celine cut in, "I thought you got burned saving someone from a car fire. That's what you said." David replied, "Well, I didn't tell the truth about that." He started shaking. "I need one of my pills," he said, looking at Celine. "Honey, they're in my medicine kit, the green ones. Can you bring them?" Celine's expression changed from curious to supportive as she quickly went to get them. While she was gone, David looked at me. "I don't need your negativity, okay?" I smiled and replied, "Just reminiscing." Celine returned with the pills and handed David the bottle. He shook as he opened it and took 3 pills. "I need these for my nerves. It's hard to talk about after my time in the Navy." He looked at Celine. "Thanks." She smiled, but her gaze turned serious toward me. "You shouldn't talk about those old high school stories. That was so long ago. We were just kids back then." I thought, yeah, we were just kids. My memories were becoming clearer. The hero in front of me had flaws that I hadn't noticed when I was younger. I looked at my wife. She still seemed to admire him. What was I going to do? After dinner, Dave left. Celine had to work the next day, but I didn't. Mom Campanaris would watch our baby. Celine and I planned to go to church in the morning. I would study in the afternoon while Celine worked. It was late winter, and spring preparations were starting. As a manager, Celine had extra responsibilities. After getting the baby tucked in, we climbed into bed and cuddled. I wrapped my arms around her, enjoying her warmth and the nice smell of her hair. We shared a peaceful moment together. As we lay side by side, I whispered, "I love you." She snuggled closer and replied, "I love you too." Then she added, "Let's have another baby." I paused, sitting up a bit, and asked, "You mean soon?" She also sat up and said, "Sierra's still a baby. If we wait, they'll be further apart in age. If we do it right away, they'll be close." I lay back, resting my hand behind my head. You might be right. I'll finish school by Christmas and should have a job lined up. Your company has been good with Sierra. Let's look at our finances in a few days and talk to our parents too. After all, they help with childcare. She cuddled under my arm. My mother mentioned it already. I checked our finances. I'm doing well at work. We can manage. I felt good about the idea of another baby. But then I hesitated. Why think about this now with Dave back? Celine wouldn't be that tricky. I trusted her. I turned to her and gave her a soft kiss on the cheek. Okay, when do we begin? Celine jumped up excitedly. I'll take care of everything. Let me clean up. We can start tonight. A wave of uncertainty hit me. Oh well, I thought. He'll come back. Later, I woke up in a panic. My fears and worries came rushing back. We made it through Sunday and Celine was off Monday. I worked all day and had class Monday night. It was that time of year, late winter, when anything could happen. The weather forecast said there might be rain. It had been really cold, and the ground was still hard. About halfway to school, the rain started to freeze. That's when I heard on the radio that classes were canceled. I pulled over, took a moment to think, then switched to four-wheel drive, although I didn't think it would help much. I turned around and slowly drove back home. When I arrived, I noticed Dave's motorcycle on the grass near our garage apartment. Oh great, he's back again. I went inside, took off my wet shoes, and started up the stairs. I was almost to the top when I heard voices. This can't be happening, I thought. Celine and I had so much together, our plans, our dreams. I continued up and reached the kitchen, moving toward our bedroom, assuming Sierra was asleep. I stopped when I heard them clearly. Dave whispered, I'm sorry I never wrote. I missed you. Celine replied softly, I love you, David. I always have. I froze, my heart sinking. Dave went on, speaking sweetly. She listened, and I stood in silence, realizing I was hearing everything I once cherished being given to someone else. Then she quietly said, We can still make this work, Dave. My brother replied, We can? Celine said, I can never leave him. It would hurt my parents too much. But it's you, Dave. It's always been you. Then we can do it, he said. Oh, Dave, I feel so guilty. Michael trusts me so much, but I really want to have your child. I couldn't take it anymore. I shouted, No! And burst through the door. I had to stop this. The next thing I heard was Celine calling, Michael! Michael! Wake up! I turned around, feeling confused. I sat up and said, Oh! Celine was beside me. You must have been having a bad dream. Wait here. I'll get you some water. She glanced at the bassinet, relieved. Thank goodness we didn't wake the baby. She slipped into her robe and went into the kitchen. I was drenched in sweat. It was just a dream, thank goodness. Celine came back. Here, sweetie, drink this. I took a sip and handed her back the glass. She looked at the clock. It was late. She reached out and pulled me closer. Come here, my darling. Let me make it better, she said, running her fingers through my hair. She softly assured me, It's all right, I'm right here. I held her close, feeling grateful. After a moment, I said, I love you, Celine. You know that. She continued to comfort me. I know you do. I love you too. You're my hero. I closed my eyes, feeling safe. It was just a bad dream. In the days and weeks that followed, things became difficult. David kept showing up at my parents' home, around my wife, and getting involved in my life. I checked online and found no record of him being in the military at all. But I learned that with some effort, I could find out about military matters. If I wanted to, I could get specs on military vehicles. While some info was classified, much was public. I wasn't interested in weapons. I wanted to learn about my brother. What I found was that he hadn't served anywhere except a couple of local facilities. My brother had some legal troubles, mostly related to drugs. Just like I suspected, he was struggling with addiction. I didn't worry about how he got there. My concern was how to break the news to Mom and Dad, and more importantly, how to tell Celine without her getting defensive. Some people react to problems, while others, like me, tend to worry and stress about them. I was hesitant, which only made things harder. Celine is kind-hearted. She has always cared for others. In a different time, she might have devoted herself to helping the community. I prefer a balanced approach. I see someone in need and I want to assist, but I believe in teaching them to help themselves. If David needed help, He should get it. But I didn't want to make his troubles worse. I needed to talk with my brother, but I had to figure out how to keep Mom, Dad, and Celine from finding out. One afternoon, I finally had a chance to talk to him at the local pub. He was in the corner with some friends, chatting as he usually did. I approached him and said, "Hey Dave, can we talk for a minute?" He gave his friends a look that said he was important and agreed to follow me to a quiet booth. We both sat down. "Dave, I know." "Know what?" he asked, looking confused. "Don't act so casual. I know about you," I replied, feeling a bit frustrated and surprised he wasn't responding seriously. He asked, "What does that mean?" "It means you act like everything is fine, but you're just pretending and getting into trouble. Honestly, I'm surprised you haven't faced bigger problems." He leaned back and laughed, then leaned in closer, saying, "That's rich coming from you. Been keeping tabs on me? I don't care what you think." "What does that mean?" I questioned. "Look, it's simple. I had things sorted out before you came along, and you know what? I'll make things better for myself." I could tell he was exaggerating. It was clear something had happened between him and my wife, especially that night at my parents' house. What worried me more was that she still seemed attached to him. Her sympathy for him made me fear she might get pulled back into his life. If that happened, I knew I couldn't stay. I looked at my brother with determination and said, "I want you to leave. If you do, I won't tell Mom and Dad. I won't ruin how Celine sees you, but you need to go." He frowned and asked, "Or what? They wouldn't believe you. They think I'm just struggling after my time overseas. And Celine, she still cares about me. She only married you because she had to. Just a word from me and she's back with me." His words hurt. I felt angry, but I knew reacting would only make it worse. I couldn't hit him. That wouldn't fix anything. I realized that the person sitting across from me had changed from the brother I once knew. I took a breath and said, "David, you're still my brother. I remember the good times we had growing up. Don't spoil it because of the past. Celine deserves better. Just do us all a favor and leave quietly." He stood up with a dismissive tone and walked away. This situation was getting more complicated. Celine was working long hours, and our mothers were babysitting Sierra when I wasn't at work or class. I was close to finishing my last 2 classes and felt good about my job prospects, but I was still interviewing. Celine and I had talked about starting a family, and around Thanksgiving she missed her period, suggesting we might welcome a new baby in the spring. The uncertainty bothered me, especially since David had been around. As Celine started to show signs of pregnancy, I couldn't help but wonder if the baby was even mine. Around Thanksgiving, I noticed my parents acting strangely, almost like they were keeping something from me. A worrying thought crossed my mind: what if David and Celine had become close, and my parents knew but were trying to protect me? That thought unsettled me. David had always been confident, but lately he seemed arrogant. It made me uneasy. I might have been overthinking things, but Celine's behavior had changed as well. There was a certain distance in how she spoke and acted, like a secret she wasn't sharing. The only things that felt solid between us were our love for Sierra, our talks about the future, and the connection we once had. But even that felt different, an unspeakable shift between us. Celine and I had always shared a strong bond built on trust and care. But now, something had changed, and I couldn't ignore it. What worried me was the thought of David interrupting our connection. I felt mixed emotions, fearing for our bond. I wanted to trust my wife, but I was anxious about our relationship's changes. Recently, she'd been more affectionate, and I wondered why. I even started reading about loyalty and commitment. When a partner becomes more caring, it could show different feelings, including fear or guilt. Guilt! I was worried that David had too much influence on Celine. My worst fears were starting to come true. It seemed like my parents knew of my brother's impact and worried I would leave Celine if I found out. I felt trapped in my thoughts. I needed to know if there was a reason to be concerned. My life had started to feel like a mystery movie. I felt I had no choice but to skip classes to see what was going on. I managed to explain my situation to my professors, who were supportive. I noticed that David had switched cars, now driving a newer one with out-of-state plates. He had been away for a few days and returned with a vehicle that raised my suspicions. I was worried. What was wrong with him? Had he changed so much? I thought about what drugs could do to someone, turning them into someone deceitful. I had already missed 3 classes without catching any sign of David and my wife together. This was my 4th missed class. Then, I saw it. David's car was parked right in my spot. I glanced at our neighbor's car and saw it wasn't around, which made sense since they sometimes went to meetings on Thursdays. I felt my heart race. My brother was upstairs in my apartment with my wife, and my daughter was up there too. I had to find out what was happening. I wasn't sure what I'd do if I discovered something troubling, but I had to know. I got out of my old, worn-out truck and quietly opened the unlocked door. I took off my shoes and carefully climbed the stairs, feeling scared about what I might find. I almost started crying. Was my wife betraying everything we had dreamed of? I couldn't bear to think it. When I reached the top of the stairs, I slowly opened the door to the kitchen. Between the small kitchen and the bedroom was a little living room. I noticed the bedroom door was open. I quietly crept through the kitchen, and that's when I heard them. They were in the living room. I stepped back and quietly went down the stairs, but I could still hear them, just a bit more softly. My heart sank. Everything was changing. It sounded like they were sitting on the sofa. I had arrived at just the right moment. I heard my brother say, "You know I care about you, and I know you feel the same." I then heard Celine reply, "I do love you. I care about you more than you think." My throat felt dry, and I wanted to keep listening. My brother added, "So why can't we make this mean something? All we need to do is go back to where it started." I couldn't see them, but I guessed he meant our bedroom. Celine said, "I have liked you since I was young. You were my dream." "It's not too late," he whispered. Celine responded, "I was waiting for the right moment. That's why I couldn't just jump in." "I wanted to come back," my brother said. "But things changed, didn't they?" she said softly. "You know I fell for someone else," David replied. Then Celine said things I never expected to hear. "I cared for you, but things changed. I started to see Michael instead." I felt a sinking feeling in my chest as she continued. "Michael was kind and caring. I could see he liked me, and I began to like him too. I stopped waiting for you. I went to see him." I could hear my brother's pain. "But I would have returned. I wanted to." Celine replied, "It wouldn't have mattered. Michael is—" She paused and continued, "He became my hero. I don't know how to express this, but I'll always care for you, David. You were a part of my past. Michael is real and has been there for me. He's the father of our child, my partner, my heart." I heard him gasp, "But Celine?" She replied, "I think you should go." In that moment, I felt a mix of sadness and relief. I quietly closed the upstairs door. I hurried down the stairs, grabbed my shoes, and escaped before anyone noticed me. I drove to college realizing I was late and missed most of my class. I made up a story about a babysitter and no one questioned me. After class, I drove home. Celine and I had been talking about names for our next child. We had chosen an Italian name for our first child, Sira. Now I was leaning toward an Irish name for our second. On my way home, I stopped to pick up flowers as a peace offering. When I walked in, Celine was holding Sira. I showed her the flowers and said, "I've thought about names for the baby." Celine interrupted, "I like Maureen for a girl, or Connor for a boy." I sat down and joked, "You had me convinced about Verna." "No, we're sticking to Irish this time," she replied, bouncing Sira gently. I got a glass of water and said, "All right then, if that's what you want." And that's how it was. Later, my friend Devin looked at me curiously. "What are you doing in this coffee shop? Why aren't you home?" I smiled and said, "I just finished an interview. I don't know where the job will be yet, but I'm getting things sorted out. Celine is on her way now. She is 7 months pregnant with our second child, and we needed to do some shopping." "So, you two are doing well?" he asked. I smiled and replied, "Very well." Devin grinned and said, "I'm glad. So you're okay about the Tommy situation?" I leaned back and explained, "When we started fresh, Tommy showed up and told me what happened that night." "During the incident at Bear Creek?" he asked. "Yes," I confirmed. "He said he and his friends had influenced her. He took her for a ride, but when he pushed too far, she realized what was happening. He couldn't believe it when she reacted strongly and managed to get away." I wondered if she had told him to talk to me. I didn't care anymore. What if she had chosen a different path? I thought. Devin nodded. Did you ever tell her you overheard the conversation with your brother? I shook my head. No, why would I? If I did, I would have to explain how I skipped classes to find her and David. She would know I doubted her. Trust is fragile. It can be easily damaged. If she thought I had doubts about her, it could lead her to doubt me too. I have had relationships before. Some women have been in my life. I don't want her to feel unsure about me. But I knew one thing. I love my wife. Her honesty about David made me feel good, but the way I found out could have hurt her. Celine has given me one lovely daughter, and we are expecting another. Her body is changing. She feels self-conscious and scared already. She doesn't need any negativity from me. I love her. She's my girl, my sweetheart. Talking about David would just hurt her more. And one more thing, Devin. What's that, Mike? I've learned to trust. Sure, she isn't perfect. Who is? I trust her. I was wrong not to. We can't go around worrying about things that probably never happened. Do you see what I mean? My doubts and fears were just my own insecurities, and that's childish. She trusts me too. Just then I noticed my phone vibrating on the table. That's her, Devin. I have to go. As I stood up to leave, Devin asked, Hey, what happened to your brother? I turned back. Oh, David. He left a couple of days after his visit with Celine. Nobody knows where he went, and honestly, I didn't care. All I know is that I have everything I've ever wanted. They're right out there in the car. I waved. See you later.